At our opening reception on Monday evening, Dr. John Junkins was presented with the K. Bailey Hutchison Distinguished Service Award. This award is given from time to time, not every year, from time to time when someone or some organization has done something so extraordinary that it compels us to make the award. Turns out that Dr. Junkins is the first TAMEST member to win the K. Bailey Hutchison Award. And indeed, what he has accomplished is just extraordinary. I have to say, I haven't ever seen anything like it. And I wanted to have a conversation with Dr. Junkins and learn, and have you learn more about the Hagler Institute. And because I think there's a lot to be learned by many of us regarding the success that you've had. So Dr. Junkins is, in addition to directing the Hagler Institute, is a world-renowned researcher and leader in the field of aerodynamics and astrodynamics. His election to the National Academy of Engineering was, quote, for contributions to the flight dynamics and flexible vehicle control. He has a number of appointments, actually, or distinctions, I should say, in his appointment as professor of aerospace engineering at Texas A&M. He's a Regents Professor, wow, holder of the Royce E. Wisenbacher Chair, and director, of course, of the Hagler Institute. So I'm going to ask John a few questions, but first I think it might be beneficial, John, for you to tell us about the Hagler Institute. And for those of you who may have had classes from him, of course he came prepared, of course. So let me turn it over to you, John, to tell us about the Hagler Institute. But again, congratulations for the award, and thank you. Thank you on behalf of all of us in Texas for what you've accomplished.
Well, thank you, David. Certainly I'd like to express my appreciation. Is my voice coming through?
Yes.
I'd like to express my appreciation to the selection committee, which led to me being the recipient of the K. Bailey Hutchison medal. It's a great honor, and I'm extremely appreciative. I think to talk about the Institute for Advanced Study, let's get right to this slide. I don't expect you to be able to identify everyone on there, but these 88 people are the first 10 classes of the Hagler Fellow program. And quite simply, this institute is a streamlined method that allows the individual tenure-track faculty in any Ph.D. granting department at Texas A&M to dream the impossible dream. I will ask you, if you are given the opportunity to name any person in the world who meets or exceeds the National Academy level of excellence, that you can choose any person in the world that you would like to come spend the mother of all sabbaticals with you and your students to pursue a scholarship for up to 1 year. And if somebody else would pay for it, who would that be? And we allow this to happen from the point of view of the nominations on the faculty. It is only 2 pages, which you can do in a couple of hours in the afternoon. The first page gives the identity of the person that you would like to bring, gives their main honorifics, their contact information, and the second page tells me why I should care. And that's the nomination. So it's an extremely low inertia approach that minimizes the faculty investment of time. There are some constraints. The number of nominations per college is restricted so that the deans have a say-so on which nominations go forward. So that allows there to be some consistency. So these 88 people were a result of twice that many nominations. So there's a 50% probability that your 2-page nomination can result in more impact than winning a $2 million So this is a really big deal in terms of its impact. So it's easy to think the general parameters on it, but
John, let me interrupt you. His mic seems to be cutting in
we
and
seem
out.
to be let me take the mic out of my pocket and
Let's see if that helps.
place it.
Let's see if the engineering professor can solve the problem. Otherwise, we'll call up the AV folks.
Testing, 1, 2, 3. Okay, I think we're on. So it's easy to state the macroscopic parameters of this, but that doesn't tell you why it works. So the first thing to understand is it's a blind process, much like a nomination to a National Academy. The nominee is supposed, underlined, italic, bold, not to know they're being nominated. They're being nominated. Why? Well, for starters, our standards are high, but we have two fundamental criteria. First of all, a very high standard of excellence in their field and recognition in their field. They have to still be active stars in their field. Secondarily, they have to be great mentors. So those two things are required. And we have not invited a Nobel laureate. We have not invited a winner of the National Medal of Science, because if someone hasn't done anything in 10 years and they have a well-earned reputation for being a jerk, we don't bring them. So it is very important to make a difference. It's nice to make a headline simultaneously, but we aren't trying to simply make a headline. We're trying to change some lives of our students and our faculty. So why would they come? Why are we getting, after we make our elimination, we're getting, some years we get 75% of these people to come. How could we possibly do that? People that don't need a job, they're busy. We have 3 Nobel laureates. We have winners of the National Medal of Science, National Medal of Technology, National Medal of Humanities. This crosses all disciplines of the university. How do you get busy people to come? Well, first and foremost, the nominating person will have a cadre of students and other faculty, associated faculty. They will see a bought and paid for team of people that they likely already know due to correlation in the discipline, who are ready and excited to collaborate with them. No grants to write. You come and you lead a team, an interested team of researchers. 2 additional Ph.D. fellowships are added to sweeten the pot. There is also discretionary monies depending upon the college. It might be $50,000 of discretionary money because there may be experiments involved that you have to work with. And so, and having housing, travel, everything is covered. So when they reflect on it, and especially now that we have 88 people here and they reflect on it, they look at these faces and look at their credentials and say, my word, this is quite an honor that is being presented here. So the combination of prestige of the appointment and having, it doesn't matter if you have a Nobel Prize, you still have to write proposals and you got to pay for your research team. This one's bought and paid for you. They're ready and willing and interested in working with you, and we have had very good success in bringing them. These maroon bordered individuals are 12 people who fell in love with us, and when their affections were reciprocated, we made it impossible for them to leave town. They are members of our permanent faculty. So this is the mother of all sabbaticals, and about 20% of those completing their time at of their appointments, which, by the way, stretch over up to 5 years. So it can be 1 year in residence, but to accommodate schedules, we have great flexibility, and that's another reason that we are successful in bringing people. So just a quick look at a little more in depth that this year's class, we have in the upper left corner, we have Professor Jaffe, He is a tremendous mathematician. His hobby is quantum mechanics and the mathematics that it inspires. He's from Harvard. We have next to him Kevin Bocut, who's the chief scientist at Boeing, and his hobbies are hypersonic aerodynamics, propulsion, and hypersonic vehicle design, and he joins a strong team at Texas A&M in that area. We have Jacqueline Chen in the center of the top row. She's from Sandia. She researches chemically reacting flows that is very important in design of engines of all variety, from aircraft to low pollution gas turbine engines for automobiles and so on. We have just to the right of her, we have Jennifer Elisith. She's from Johns Hopkins. She's a biomedical engineer and also a professor of ophthalmology. And she has developed materials that can replace, repair, and regenerate damaged eyes, among other things. So she is a biomaterials person. Ted Goodson is the top right, and Ted is from University of Michigan, and he also is in optics and energy storage, characterization, and detection of things like explosive devices. Nancy Sotos is in the lower left, and she is from UIUC, University of Illinois, Champaign-Urbana. She's another material scientist, and she designs composite materials that are self-aware and self-healing and self-reporting of whatever damage that they may have. Next to Donna is, next to her is Donna Strickland. Donna is a Nobel Prize in Physics winner in 2018, and by the way, this is the second woman to win the Nobel Prize in Physics since the early 1900s. Her expertise is in laser optics, and she invented chirped pulse amplification. You may or may not know that is the key to doing LASIK eye surgery. It also is a key to doing all kinds of manufacturing using lasers. It's sort of the opposite of 3D printing is material removal to do very precise nanotechnology. The last fellow this year's class is Nikolay Zuledev, and he holds a joint appointment, one at the University of Southampton in the UK and the other one at NTU in Singapore. And he is an expert in research in the interface between material science and nanophotonics. And he makes materials that are engineered to have specific optical properties. So this is the kind of talent that we brought every year for a decade. I'm midstream in the 11th class of evaluations. Things look like we're going to have 2 Nobel laureates in that class, and also it's going to be our largest class, I believe. It'll be in the mid-teens. So that's where we are. We're accelerating the number of people that we are bringing, and trying to get some of the under-participating colleges to participate more significantly, and to have every single Ph.D. granting department to be asking the question, well, gee, who are the best people in my field? Which one of those should we bring here? And let me just say that when this institute was created, and for all practical purposes, it was created in terms of an operational entity when Chancellor John Sharp arrived in his first week, and he and I had a lunch, and I posed this challenge to him to provide, help me come up with the startup funds. And in that same luncheon, we invented the Chancellor's Research Initiative, which begot the Governor's Research Initiative. So several immediate impacts in terms of strategizing how to build the university and how to bring talent to the state came out of that luncheon. I must say it's the most impactful lunch I've ever had. Chancellor Sharp said it was one of the more expensive ones that he's had. But I have to thank Chancellor Sharp. I have to thank John Hagler for his $20 million endowment that named this institute. I have to thank 2 people, actually 3 people sitting right in front of me. I see Clifford Fry here. Clifford, raise your hand. Clifford's the Deputy Director, and skip one, I have Amanda Scott. Amanda, raise your hand. And Amanda is my boss. She keeps the Institute rolling. And during the year that I spent as interim president, if these two people hadn't been as great as they are, the Institute would have fell on its face, but they kept things going with just a little bit of input from me. And I thank you sincerely. And let's say, this is the tell. But the most important person I want to thank is this lady, Eloise, is sitting here, my bride of 57 years. She has a very high tolerance for pain. And so with that, I've run over time a little bit, but I wanted to get those things on the record.
So, John, I and a few others here have recruited National Academy members and Nobel laureates. It's so hard to do. These are people at the top of their game. They're highly valued, well compensated at their home institutions with infrastructure and students. And what just blows my mind is already, and there are more to come, you've recruited a dozen of those folks to the state of Texas and to stay. And most of us would be proud to have one or two, but you have a dozen. I don't, unless you're in this game of recruiting talent at that level, I just don't think you can appreciate how significant it is. I don't know of any other program in the country that's ever even come close to that. So you don't need to respond to that, but I just want to say thank you. I want to go back to the origins of this idea because it was your idea, an expensive lunch for Chancellor Sharp, but you were the brainchild behind this and the founding fellow. Go back to those days when you conceived the program and tell us sort of what was motivating you to take this pathway with such passion.
Well, first of all, I have to confess that I stole the idea. My first academic appointment was at the University of Virginia, and there they had a very similar institute. It was named after Edgar Shannon, an Elizabethan poet who was also president at University of Virginia, and it was called the Shannon Institute for Advanced Study. He has a lot of audacity to name something after himself as president, but anyway, the Shannon Institute, very similar, had engaged the faculty to make nominations and bring people for up to a year, a very similar structure. However, the Shannon Institute had a fatal flaw. University of Virginia fancies itself an Ivy League school, but like us, it's a state university, and it has to go every biennium to Richmond to get their budget. And I know this is going to be a shock to many of you in this room, but not every state legislature person appreciates the power and importance of research. It's maybe just a Virginia phenomenon. We don't have this problem in Texas. But there were people who were criticizing this, what they viewed as a luxury item, every time that University of Virginia president went down to defend their budget. And also, it was run as a tax on the university budget. And so some deans felt like they were having to donate to this common cause. So both within and without, there was political damage being done every year to this institute, and it failed after about 18 or 19 years of, from some point of view, a very successful operation, but it wasn't stable. So I knew when I wanted to do this, and I wrote a white paper in 1999, actually, one-page white paper asking the question, should we build something like that? But at the heart of it, we had to have a startup plan, but at the heart of this long-term strategy was to build something that was equivalent of a nonprofit in the heart of the university. I wanted it to be totally endowed so that it would be able to withstand the economic comings and goings of the state budget, and also need to be viewed as a source of resources rather than a sink. And that was a very important part of the concept that I had. approached every president. You know, we had a musical chairs presidency for some times, but every new president that came in, I would put this idea on the table uniformly. Wow, this is a great idea, but well, it's too much money. Too much money. We can't do that. And what I was really asking for was a startup plan for 5 years. And it was falling on deaf ears, even though I chaired the search for Bob Gates. He also didn't want to spring for the startup dollars on it. So finally, when Chancellor Sharp came to town in September of 2011, I put it before him the first week he was in town. And Chancellor Sharp, those of you who know him know that he is a person that wants to make an impact and wants to make a difference. And I saw he bit hard on this idea, and so that was the genesis of it. He liked it, and so and he provided half the startup funds, and I raised the rest by various initiatives. So the startup monies was I asked for $10 million over the first 5 years, and he gave me 5, and so I found the rest of it from other sources.
We're going to open it up for your questions in just a moment, but I see a couple of university presidents out here, Richard Benson of UT Dallas, Taylor Amy of UT San Antonio, and I wonder whether, and you know, copying somebody is the ultimate form of flattery. I'm wondering if a Hagler Institute type program could be implemented at some of our emerging research universities, perhaps on a smaller scale, but it may be, if you scale it back too much, it would cease to be effective. So if you were advising a few university presidents about perhaps at a smaller scale and the implementability, what would you say to them in terms of advice?
I would say when you try to scale it, it has to be big enough that every college in your university has a very high probability of getting one every year, or getting a fellow every year. If it doesn't, if it's so small that only 1 or 2 colleges are going to win, it won't fly. It has to have enough. It has to be that size, that critical mass. One feature that I didn't discuss, we haven't discussed, is there's another issue. We all know that in every organization that I've ever been a part of, money equals power. It's just the way life is. And the further secret to the success of this institute, it is literally run by the distinguished professors of the university. One way I've kept costs down is we just have 3 employees, and I'm half an employee. I'm still Professor John. All of the work is done by a committee of 9. The work of evaluating and vetting all the nominations is done by a committee of 9 elected distinguished professors. And this rotating body of 3-year appointments each has to work. It's a heavy job to do this evaluation the way that we do it. And not every university president and provost is willing to delegate this much discretionary money where the deciders are a bunch of the egocentric distinguished professors. It's just not every university is willing to let the inmates run the asylum. And Texas A&M is a different institution. We're quite comfortable with the asylum concept and allowing the inmates to run it.
Sounds like great advice. Make sure you take care of all the colleges and you have the right culture to actually implement it. If you'd like to ask a question, please step up to the microphone, and as you're walking up, if you do have a question, John, I have one for you. Can you tell us a little bit more about what the year looks like for the fellow? Because even if they don't wind up sticking permanently, I know there's a lot of value added to your students and others during that year. And again, if you have a question, come to the microphone, but why don't you, you would address that one.
Let me give you a kind of one of the signature impacts that have come out of this, and it'll capture this, I believe. Alan Needleman is a material scientist, and he was in the very first class. And Alan came, he's a super material scientist, and we had just formed material science and engineering as a brand new department. And he came with the Chancellor's Research Initiative resources. He had a $5 million dowry, and he also got, I believe, 3 faculty slots. And he used one of those to hire George Farr from the University of Tennessee, another National Academy person, and he got another $5 million from the Governor's Research Initiative and some faculty slots. And so they're 2 superstars with a lot of recruiting power. Were at the instantiation of a new department. And not too long thereafter, Ned Thomas left Rice on another $5 million and several more faculty slots. And this material science and engineering department went from nothing to something world-class overnight. It's now got about 20 faculty, and they hired, in fact, their own department head, and this thing is just took off. They won a $12 million grant that right away, and they've just done extremely well. So there's just story after story where a person comes in, not only they're doing their research, but they make a difference.
Yeah.
And that's being willing to build a cluster around these permanent hires and giving them a lot of horsepower, ground to run on, that they can really impact their zip code in terms of additional people and resources and change their lives and the people with them.
Okay, we've got 5 minutes left, and I think maybe 2 questions will work perfectly. Let's go over here.
So thanks for your extraordinary vision. I have a question, like, what really sparks in me is like you can actually retain these people. So some people just come here for a sabbatical and actually you happen to retain them. So there's something about the culture that you bring to this institute which is really remarkable. I'm curious, what's the thing behind the scenes?
Sauce?
What's the secret sauce? Yeah.
One word: passion. You got to believe. And you bring people in, and I try to be as infectious as I can, but I believe in this, body and soul. And let me capture it another way. We've been able to double Hagler's $20 million, and over half of that are faculty voting with their own life savings. So the buy-in on this institute amongst Texas A&M faculty is one of the most gratifying things I've ever been a part of. It's almost religious, and that makes a big difference.
Taylor.
Hey, John. Taylor Amy. I'm the president at UTSA, and it's a little bittersweet to be making this comment for the following reason. The Hagler Institute is immensely highly regarded and has moved mountains and done huge things. So, testament to your vision and to all the support that's come to it. And I'm glad that Chancellor Sharp has viewed it as a painful exercise. I think I appreciate that. But I have to say, I was the Vice Chancellor for Research at the University of Tennessee when you were courting George Farr. My job was to retain him. And so, congratulations, but I, and it took a while, and we were close, but the possibility of what you were offering at A&M and the new Materials Science and Engineering Department was profound, and passion is exactly correct. So congratulations, and keep going and keep doing what you're doing. Texas needs this, and A&M is a wonderful place to do this, so congrats.
Indeed. No, we're out of time, but this discussion is such a reminder, especially for those of us who are engineers. It's so much about success in life boils down to people, the relationships with people, and the secret sauce and the passion. You know, when the faculty own the program and they share in that ownership, isn't it so wonderful to be a part of something with wonderful colleagues, absolutely wonderful colleagues, where you share in things, and it sounds like that's exactly what you have. Well, ladies and gentlemen, join me in thanking and congratulating this year's Kay Bailey Hutchison Award winner, Dr. John Junkins.